Hello and welcome to Benson and Coffee Unfiltered,
where we will be discussing fitness, lifestyle, healthy eating habits, relationships, gas station performance pills, answering romantic queries. You have anything else, Tyler? Is there anything? Do you need help with anything right now? Because I feel like I'm in a position where I can help you with it.
I mean, and everything else that we come across as we go. But you know what it's going to be, right?
It's going to be unfiltered.
All right, today we've got some special guests. You guys want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm Jensen. I run TCY coaching. So we do a little bit of bodybuilding, decent bit of biohacking. And then my wife, Kara, who's a physician assistant, runs most of the functional health coaching.
Nice.
And then we're getting a little bit into the business coaching side, helping health coaches specifically as well.
Nice.
So we spin a lot of plates.
So for viewers that don't know what biohacking is, which is a popular thing amongst coaches now, tell us about what your process is for that, and a little bit of pretend somebody has no idea what it is and explain.
Yeah, it's almost a cheesy term sometimes. Like, it's overused and it can mean a lot of different things. So I almost sometimes don't use it. But to me, what I emphasize with my clients is not just building their body, but also building their productivity and their health. Nice. So I work with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, high-level CEOs, C-suite guys, things like that, or even just busy parents who are like, hey, I want to be able to grind all day like I did in my 20s, even though I'm in my 40s or 50s, and then still have great energy for when I come home and need to be with my family and have a good mood and everything. There's definitely an element of aesthetic anti-aging, so helping get rid of some wrinkles, helping tan in a way that doesn't, build up more wrinkles, helping recover faster from training, since things definitely change as you age quite a bit. Recovering from little micro injuries here and there. I'm sure we all love our BPC and TB500 at the minimum, when we've all had little issues here and there. And then improving blood work. And then also Kara really leads the gut health and thyroid optimization piece of it. So we're looking at internal health, being able to grind, being able to be in a good mood, and hopefully being able to live a bit longer while, still kind of looking like a badass.
Yeah. That's a lot of people don't realize a lot of your health stems from the gut, your thyroid, everything internal. So that's a really important thing that I've noticed a lot more people getting into and realizing over the past few years. So with the new stuff available, there's also a lot of new supplementation available. And I know you guys probably are interested in using some of that. So what are some of the things you guys like to use to optimize somebody's health?
I would say the first thing that we emphasize a lot is we're always emphasizing to test before you guess. So we don't really add a lot of protocols before we know what's going on first. I think that's one of the biggest things is people see all these crazy protocols online and they're like, oh, let me try this because this sounds good. Or there's plenty of people that just like to try the newest, most upcoming thing. And it not only may just be a waste of money, but it could also be doing more harm than good if you're not doing what's appropriate for your own body. So we really emphasize a lot, first and foremost, doing a lot of testing. So blood work, GI map, if it's something more gut health related, and then kind of going from there with the protocols. But I'll let them speak more specifically on like newer supplements, peptides, stuff like that.
Yeah, so when it comes to the newest tools, I feel like mitochondrial enhancers until recently were a lot of hype, but didn't deliver that much. And then now, over the last 2 years, the tools that have become much more easily available, and some have some actual formal research, such as SLUPP332. And then a lot of them just now finally have a lot more anecdotal, bro science, like people actually trying it out and talking with each other. Experience, I'll say SLUPP332 is a fantastic fat loss and energy agent. So that's been one that I've used quite heavily in a lot of my clients. Honestly, Clen was very popular in bodybuilding, still is.
Yeah. But
with the advent of all these new mitochondrial enhancers, like even 5-amino 1 and 2 at the very end of a prep, or combining that with NAD plus, MOTS-C in some people, there's a lot of variability with how much people get out of that. Combining those 4 tools allows people to feel drastically better when they are on a prep, or if they're just cutting aggressively, or just trying to lose fat in the healthiest way possible, where they're not messing up their sleep, being in a super sympathetically driven state all day, so like fight or flight state, and being able to just recover better through it. Like there's still plenty of things that you need to do when your mitochondria are working faster and you're having more of them. And so I'm a big fan of using injectable glutathione, which isn't a new tool, but it has become more popular recently. And those 4 things, and maybe I'll throw SS31 in there as well, have been some of my favorite new tools for sure.
And how do you, so whenever you're looking at testing for that, obviously we want to reference blood work and look at a lot of things from a health standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and so on. Exactly what all are you looking for whenever you guys, have a client pull bloods and look at everything? What exactly are you guys having them pull and look for?
Yeah, so for sure, I'm going to start with what we call like a basic panel, which is something that you would get with your standard primary care on a physical. So that's including things like your CBC, so your blood counts. I'm always looking at it from an optimal standpoint. So even though your hemoglobin is within the range, like, does that mean that you're actually optimal? Do you have signs of anemia? Do you have signs of vitamin deficiency? There's a lot you can get from actual basic panels. But then I'd also check on a comprehensive metabolic panel. So you're including things like your blood sugar, kidney function, liver function, all your electrolytes. And then beyond that, with the standard physical, you're probably going to get your TSH checked, which is a thyroid marker. But in my opinion, that's not enough. I'm always going to check a more in-depth thyroid panel. So what does your actual thyroid look like, which is typically measured by your free T3. So if that's not included in your blood work, then you're missing a huge part of the thyroid. Hormones. So for both men and women, I'm checking testosterone levels, estradiol, and then more so for women, but progesterone. That's not going to be standardly included on a, just conventional medicine.
Correct.
Physical. Usually a lot of people will request it. They'll request hormones and they still just get TSH. So that is not a hormone panel. Besides that, we check on a lot, especially if someone maybe has signs of insulin resistance. I would check on a lot more in-depth labs for that. So I would check on hemoglobin A1C, which is the average of your blood sugars the last 3 months, and then an actual insulin level to see if you actually are insulin resistant, which would show up prior to any blood sugar dysregulation. What else? We're going to check on some inflammatory markers. Very, very important, especially if people are on any type of PEDs, like are we seeing any level of inflammation in the body? So usually I do that with CRP. You can also check that with ferritin levels will show inflammation.
IL-6 maybe.
Yeah, a little bit more expensive test. The IL-6 can be tested as well too. And then for women, for sure want to be checking on iron levels and also ferritin levels if they're menstruating. That could be something that's very commonly missed in conventional medicine. And cholesterol panel, that's pretty important. A lot of times you will get that with the standard conventional medicine physical, but we can check even more in depth lipid panel.
Sure.
And what else?
We can get into gut testing because we check that for a lot of people too. That's a lot of big fancy words, but maybe give us the heavy hitters that you see most commonly off with gut testing that have a big impact on people.
Yeah, so usually for gut testing, you can get kind of a glimpse if somebody is having something off just with blood work. Like if you're seeing a lot of vitamin deficiencies, you might think like there's probably something off with the gut. If somebody has low B12, low vitamins, low iron, I'm like starting to think in my head, why do they have all these vitamin deficiencies? It's probably an absorption issue with the gut. So if you start with blood work, which I always recommend, and you're seeing things like a little bit off, then ask them about gut health. And then from there, I will usually get what's called a GI map. That's my favorite gut health test because it's the most specific test you can do.
Yes.
and that's a stool sample. So there's a million different things we could talk about with that, but there you're seeing how is your digestion? Are you having low digestive enzymes, which may be leading to poor breakdown of food? Are you having overgrowth of things? So you have good bugs and you have bad bugs in your gut. So are the bad bugs outweighing the good bugs? Do you have things like H. pylori, which could cause heartburn, reflux, and stomach ulcers? Do you have parasites or worms? That's always the thing that people care about the most. Do you have low immune function or poor gluten processing? There's a lot of different things you can see with gut health testing, but that would definitely be the next step if you think there's like absorption.
Absolutely. And I think, when you look back on how long essentially we've been looking at, the fitness industry as a whole, I think gut health and digestion is something that's still relatively new for a lot of people. Like a lot of people haven't considered that until, recently in the last several years here. But it's something that can really make or break someone, like everyone used to say, well, you are what you eat. Well, you are what you can digest well and make use of. And that's the thing. So that's something that I've always discussed with my clients, and a lot of what you said there, and trying to optimize digestion will carry through into everything else. It really will. I mean, so many things start there. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel it's funny because I started coaching back in 2013. And back then there was really nobody was talking about gut health.
No, not at all.
There was none of that, and I feel like a lot of those problems stemmed over those years because a lot of people were overfeeding themselves or just doing horrible diet practices to try to get the physique they wanted, when in reality they probably could have done it in a better way. So I feel like a lot of that came forth because of the protocols and the things people were doing 10 plus years ago.
And taking unintelligent approaches to gear and offsetting organ health and upsetting digestion. And
the cycles I used to see 10 plus years ago compared to now are very, very different.
Oh yeah.
You think it was overall worse back then?
More so with the majority. Like I saw more people doing heavier cycles than I do now. Like a lot more people now seem to do it in a different way. But then, I remember back in the day, you would see people running, 700 milligrams of tren a week. And now that's kind of like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, it was always so taboo to even talk about it back then too. Like nobody wanted to discuss it. Even online, it was still kind of taboo. Like you'd have these underground forums and so on. But, so guys would just kind of ask someone or whatever, and they would be taking kind of shots in the dark with all this. And nobody was getting blood work. Nobody was looking at things like that. And, obviously now the industry is far more saturated with information, some good, some bad, but there is information available out there, and there's more people that are educated on these matters that can help. There's podcasts like ours and many others that can, help educate people on these things. And then, so I think, like, I agree with you on the whole, like it's not as bad now, but it seems to be glorified more now too, though.
I feel like there's more people doing it, but overall people are doing it smarter.
Agreed.
Smarter, to an extent. I've heard some of the cycles some of the people are running to win at national level. And, I go to a lot of the national level shows, and you see the side effects. And I feel like there's some things that are ran to, like I know some females running tren or 100 milligrams of Winstrol to get the size and conditioning they need. And it's kind of wild. It's very crazy, the differences between what people are willing to do and the better ways to do things.
And I almost think the bigger issue on the women's side, it's not even just what they do. I think it's the fact that women are typically still not informed very well by their coaches about what the potential risks are. Or if you're using if you're using 100 mgs of legit Winstrol, at that point, it's a certainty. Like you're going to viralize. You're going to you're pseudo trans at that point. Like you're accepting that you're going to be more masculine for the rest of your life for something that you may only care about for a max of like 15 more years in most cases. And coaches a lot of the time aren't willing to have that conversation and be that honest with their clients. They just think this client said they want to achieve this goal, I'm going to get them there. They're not willing to think long-term for that client and be like, hey, just FYI, I've done this for long enough to know what happens on the other end. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's not. It's your decision at the end of the day, but let's at least talk through it so that you're not looking back with regret.
Yeah. And to your point there, I agree. Absolutely. You have some coaches that, won't necessarily inform someone for the sake of adding another title to the resume or helping someone win and being able to make that Instagram post. But then also you have some people in the industry who don't necessarily know. And they may be a male coach who's only supplemented for his body. And they're saying, okay, well, this works for this and that. And, like a lot of these tests that we're talking about aren't cheap. And a lot of, good coaching isn't cheap. And sometimes people will look for, that budget coaching or whatever. And then you run into these issues. And I've had people contact me and they're like, why am I, I was doing this, and this. Why am I feeling this? And it's like, well, yeah, that's why. And so that's the thing is unfortunately, you do have some people that want to get that award, get that Instagram post and make good on that website. And then some people just simply copy and paste and say, take this. And anytime you're looking at introducing things to your body, especially offsetting hormone levels for the sake of aesthetics, performance, whatever, you do have to keep that in mind. And like you said, I mean, you can't add, large amounts of androgens to a female body without becoming androgynous, having androgynous side effects and so on.
Yeah.
It's simply what it is.
Yeah, and I think honestly too, like the fault does partially fall on the coaches, but I think that there's a lot of competitors, especially when people are in their 20s or early 20s, where they honestly just haven't fully had their brain developed and they cannot see.
They can't see the big picture. No. Yeah.
So they might be telling, their coach maybe they think they're on the same page, but at the end of the day, like that person is not able to think that far in advance and think about like, what does this look like for me in 15 or 20 years? And some people can't even think about it 6 months in advance. Like, what does it look like when my liver is destroyed in 6 months?
Sure.
So I think that it's both. I think it's both the client and the coach, but like people just need to take responsibility. And that's obviously why podcasts and education like this is super helpful because if people are made aware, this could happen to you, then it at least puts that in their brain and they'll start thinking about it.
Absolutely. And something too that I've had this conversation with so many clients, but you can take so many compounds and at such dosages that your organ health is compromised. Your body will always prioritize organ health over growth. If the goal is to get better, more aesthetic, stronger, whatever, you have to be healthy to do so. You can't compromise health and expect to improve with performance or aesthetics. Yeah. It can't be backwards.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I learned that the hard way. I was a stupid kid. I had questionable influences. Like I did the 700 mgs of tren, literally.
I've been there too, man. It's
yeah. It's like, it works till it doesn't, right? And it's funny. I joke with her now. I'm just like, man, if I could have just replaced a lot of that Deca and Tren that I ran with these glutathione in my shots, pinning just as much total milliliters across the week, I probably would have a lot smaller of a waist right now.
Yeah.
But you don't think about it. And like you said, gut health wasn't discussed until now. So it's like, there's some of us where like we blew out our waist and it's like, will we be ever able to fix it? Who knows? How long is the candlestick left of like how much we could push our bodies before our competitive career is over? That's short. Then it could have been.
Sure.
Big thing is I always tell people is it's better to take this slower and do it in a better way. I've had several people go to me throughout the years and they, started with me at 21 years old thinking they're going to turn pro in a year. And then they win their first show, but they think they can get it done faster. So they go push everything as hard as they can. And now they're injured or their gut health's not good, or they're not even competing at all anymore. And it's crazy because you got to think about the long term with this. The most successful people I've seen in competitive bodybuilding or getting even just a solid physique are the ones that do it in the proper way.
Mm-hmm. You brought up a really good point with the injuries too.
Yeah.
And I have a young guy who has insane genetics, and he trains hard, but I have to beat the fact that he needs to use a tempo and listen to his body when he's sore, all that in it, because he's a hardworking guy, and he's obsessed with this in a good way, and it works for him. So I want that for him. But I'm like, dude, you went from pressing 90s to 150s in a year and a half. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no matter how much GH you're slamming, no matter how much BPC, TB500, GHK, KPV, whatever else we can throw at it you want, your collagen synthesis rates, like your joint strength, is never going to be able to quite keep up with how much stronger your muscles are getting. And I'm like, if what anchors your muscle to your bone, like your tendons, tears, you're fucked. Like you're not
set back
like,
a couple months.
Or if you tear a pec real bad or something, that may never look the same. Like you can screw yourself up forever. You can have a bicep that rolls up, and I mean, some surgeries can make it look better, but sometimes you're stuck with like the Larry Wheels bicep, and it's like you might screw yourself up forever. So I try to give them a little tasteful, actually hefty bit of fear to not do that. I'm like, just earn that next weight, like make the weight hard. And if you have any little weird pain, just stop the set, live to lift another day, you know?
That's just it. And I think that's hard to get through to some of the younger lifters, because it does feel good when that weight starts coming up and you're getting more reps and you're moving more weight and all that. You know, it's so gratifying. It feels so good. But, you know, to that point, you know, strength training does strengthen connective tissue. It increases bone density, all that, but not at the rate in which someone like that individual is growing. So it's like you can eventually get strong enough to move enough weight to cause great damage to yourself. And, you know, and I've seen that before myself, and you have to be mindful of that, you know, like, you know, to that point, the muscles are moving, right? But if you break the connection, you know, you could lead to issues down the road where you can't lift. You can lead to aesthetic issues where the muscle doesn't look the same. And if the goal is bodybuilding, then your career is over. So being mindful of your training, and that's why I use tempo work a whole lot. Even if I use tempo work a whole lot, you know, like control. I mean, especially if I know someone, you know, if I know they're strong, but yet they don't quite know how to control things, out of the gate, we're doing tempo work. It's like, we're going to learn how to control this weight.
Yeah. I kind of, just as like a broad guideline for a lot of people, I'm like, obviously if you're using an exercise where you kind of need to emphasize the short range or like squeeze of the movement, like a hip thrust or something, it's a little bit different.
Sure.
But for most exercises, I'm telling people, just as a broad guideline, use a 3-1-0 tempo. So 3 second eccentric, a 1 second slight pause during the peak stretch, and then a 0 second, so explosive concentric. And that historically seemed to work pretty well, especially, you know, there'll be people where when I first start training them, you know, they're doing RDLs with like 365 or something for sets of 6 or 7 or whatever. I show them that tempo. And first of all, they're like, wow, I can't walk for a week, even just after 2 working sets. But, you know, they had it back down to like 275, and they're like, that was an ego hit. I'm like, yeah, but you're growing more.
Absolutely. And you're increasing the time under tension as well. You know, those reps are lasting longer, making that set last longer. The muscles are working for a longer period of time.
Yeah. And they seem to recover a little bit faster with their nervous system too.
Yes.
When you're not loading the spine with as much total weight. That's a bit of bro science, because I still think it's more so just about the total cumulative load, but it's just something that I've noticed too. If you can like take the movements where you're actually loading, is like loading up the spine quite a bit, and take some of the load off of that specifically. So like things like RDLs, good mornings, stiff leg deads. If anyone's doing any type of squat where it's actually loaded on your shoulder / trap / upper back, that seems to make a big difference. I don't know if you guys have similar experiences with spines.
Yeah. It so you know, like, how do you make lightweight feel heavy? Well, you move it slowly. And that's how we can put a lot of stress on the muscle without putting so much stress on the joints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you start leaving behind some of your joints for more muscle, that's whenever the injuries occur. And I've noticed that with people over the years, or they won't. We were talking about this earlier, actually. Somebody when they're not training their core, simply not putting an emphasis on core strength, they're not able to actually stabilize, and then boom, their form is off, their injuries occur, lower back gets hurt or something of the sort. And it's one of those things where you can prevent this by treating your body correctly, watching your recovery. One of my biggest issues with my younger clients is getting them to take rest days. And realize, like, you don't, because I mean, I was the same way back whenever I was in college. I would train 7 days a week if I could. And it was just something that I enjoyed. So getting that through some people's heads, it's like, hey, like that rest day is just as important as the training. It is one thing where it's like, if you make that change, you're often better. And my thoughts too are, if you're able to train 7 days a week, and I know this from personal experience, that I wasn't training hard.
You're not pushing nearly hard enough. No,
You're not. You're training Charmin Ultra Soft if you can train 7 days a week.
Oh yeah, I look forward to my rest days when I learn to actually train. And that's something I think that you grow into over time. It's kind of maturity aspect of training. You get out of that mindset of, I need to go to the gym every day. And it's okay to stay active. You can go on your off day. I tell people, go hiking or go get your steps in, but learn to relax.
I've even seen improvements in growth by adding rest days.
Oh yeah.
Like somebody go from 5 days to 4 with lifting in an off season, and that extra recovery allow for better growth.
Yeah. And I think part of that too, especially in the off season when you are able to train like really hard every time that you do train, I've noticed for me, and I've heard Nate Spears and a few other really big guys talk about this too. You have more time to eat, but also you seem to digest a little bit better because you're parasympathetic, so rest and digest rather than sympathetic fight or flight for more of the day. And when you're that big and you have to eat that much that consistently, and you have to run enough androgens that it's already making your brain super dopaminergic, like just, kind of naturally fight or flight, it really does make a difference. But another thing that I emphasize with some of my clients who try to have really high frequency is I'm like, you're going to do this for a really long time. If it doesn't stay fun to train, this whole process isn't going to work as well. So I'm like, if you're training so frequently that your joints are getting sore, or you're not able to PR as much, or you're just not, like, you don't have that like next level like oomph in the gym, just like mentally or explosiveness wise, it's going to be less fun. Like every time you go to the gym, not every time, most of the times that you go to the gym, it should be fun. And I've noticed when I implement more rest days rather than less, it makes it more fun consistently. And I don't think I've ever given someone more rest days and then grown less. Sometimes it stays the same, sometimes they grow more. I don't think they've ever grown less for me pushing for more rest days.
If I have somebody that's telling me they're not recovering as well, my first thing is like, let's train less. That's the solution. Yeah. I might say take 2 straight days off here the next 2 days after this. And usually, they do that. And by, they do it Saturday and Sunday. And by Monday, their body's actually feeling good again. And they're actually excited to train. And that's a good thing too. One thing you talked about earlier, Kara, is progesterone in females. And I don't think people know how important that aspect of things are. So from your physician standpoint, can you kind of touch on that and how you go about that process and why it's important?
Yeah.
This is her bread and butter. She's got a whole podcast on this. She's got to go.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I genuinely feel like low progesterone is probably the most common hormone dysfunction I see in women. I should say in like menstruating women. And the reason being is because you have what's called cortisol steal. So if your cortisol is elevated, basically what it's going to do is steal from your progesterone. So we all know that a lot of women now are living in a state of stress or high cortisol. And progesterone is probably like the least sexy hormone. Like obviously, you hear about testosterone, the benefits of that. You hear of estrogen, the benefits of that. But you don't really hear too much about progesterone. But I do feel like that is probably one of the biggest issues. And going back to the frequent training piece, one of the most common reasons why I see low progesterone, especially in the type of women I work with, is they're just doing too much. So they might think that in order for them to stay lean, they need to work out every single day. So they're going to the gym, they're doing Pilates, they're doing kickboxing, they're doing tennis and all these other things, and like completely bombarding themselves every day. And I always tell people, you have one stress bucket. So like your body doesn't recognize the difference between stress from work or stress from relationships or stress from overtraining or stress from chronic dieting. Like it's all seen as the same thing. And all of those stressors play a role into what your progesterone looks like. So if your progesterone is low, you're commonly going to see issues like irregular menstrual cycles. You may not be ovulating. You're probably going to have a lot more PMS symptoms. You're going to have more anxiety and you're going to have poor sleep. And so often I have that same exact picture come to me. Like people are like, I can't sleep. I'm anxious. My periods are 40 days and then 20 days and then 30 days. And, they're almost always like the overachiever type woman that wants to do everything. Like they have a job and they're also training all these different things and maybe they're a mom. And then I check their blood work and of course the progesterone is low. And I'm like, I could have told you this even before checking it. But I do feel like for a lot of women, it's just literally like less is more sometimes.
I agree with that. And it's one of those things where I've noticed over the years, if I get a woman's blood work back and progesterone's low and we elevate that, their overall quality of life, their ability to build muscle, lose body fat, train better, it just all improves. And I think it's an important thing that a lot of people need to realize, because it's not usually something that they even test on blood work these days. It's like they skip over it. And, like you said, it's always testosterone and estrogen, and then that's kind of a left behind part. But it is becoming more commonplace now. And I think it's because people like you are speaking about it and kind of letting people know, like, hey, that could be your issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think, too, is like a lot of people don't have someone that really knows how to read that type of hormone blood work and looking at their blood work. So say, for example, they did get their OBGYN to order it and it falls within the normal range. Like the range that it gives you for hormones is insane. Like it's including all phases of the cycle. It's including, usually like postmenopausal as well. So it's like, if you fall within that range, that gives you zero information. Like you need to assess it based off of where you are at in your cycle. Are you on birth control? Like the timing of the labs, like is your menstrual cycle regular? So all that needs to be taken into account, because I would say like normal does not equal optimal. And I think that's where a lot of people are led astray, is they get blood work, their progesterone was at 0.1, which is horrible for a luteal phase progesterone, but it's still within the range because that's normal for follicular phase. And no one really told them the difference in that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the blood marker ranges are a little bit obsolete these
Absolutely.
days for any person. I think, especially if you're trying to look and feel good, you really have to have all that stuff in a certain area, which is, in my opinion, a much smaller range than what they put on paper. So it's good to get people to know that. And I know you guys are really push that with your coaching, which I think is much appreciated. I've noticed that, Jensen, you're getting into more like helping families and husbands and wives to feel better so they can keep up with their families, which that's something I really push. I have guys that, come to me 270 pounds and they're just, I can't even keep up with my kid in soccer. And that's what they want to do. And it's very important to get your body responding well, because you're only going to get worse if you don't address those issues.
It's a good sales pitch for coaching in general.
Yeah.
It's not going to get better, so you should probably invest in it now before it gets worse.
Yeah, that's always like the thing you hear. It's like your medical bills are always going to cost more than your coaching if you don't. And that's the truth,
You pay for it now or you pay for it later, man.
Exactly. And you don't want to get to a point where you're getting knee replacements because you're not able to walk and stuff like that, because you got yourself overweight and injured because you're not able to move. I mean, I've been to places out in public before where I've seen somebody with such a bad back, they walk almost in a 90-degree angle. And it's like And it's just, there's stuff that you can do to prevent that. And I really think that's important that you're aiming to help those kind of people.
Yeah, and it's been extra rewarding, not just because the wins are so cool. Like there's one that I bring up. My one client, Mike, he'd be cool with me saying this. If he sent me a message probably about a month ago at this point, where the anchor for their boat got messed up and he needed to just like dive in and do it. Like everyone else was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like they weren't, going to be capable of doing that. He just doesn't even think about it because he's just jacked now, or like age like 50, takes off his shirt, just dives in, just does it, comes up. And when he comes up, his kid's looking over the bridge and he's like, Dad, you're a superhero. And I was like, that's the coolest freaking win I've heard in my entire life. And ever since I heard that, I'm just like, yep, I'm helping more dads like that. Like I love getting guys jacked and everything, but I'm like, dude, that's tough to freaking beat.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is like, I also personally deal with autoimmune issues. So part of it's my fault because like I was 290 for a bit. So like obviously I was doing things that weren't going to help that. But there is a genetic factor that runs in my family with it too. So I have something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is basically extreme inflammation of the spine. And when it gets really bad, if it gets bad enough, you can basically become like immobile from it. But for me, how it acts up is once I'm asleep for long enough, my back gets so tight that it just feels like someone basically like shoved a knife in it. And when I try to move, like it doesn't just hurt, like I physically can't. So collapse because I have to like do these extreme like flops in the bed with the rest of my body to get my body to move. But it's getting better now that I'm downsizing and everything. And then I also have psoriatic arthritis. So like my knees were bad for a bit. I had like a patch on my forehead. I still had some back and stuff. So helping some people that have autoimmune issues like that. Like I have one client with Hashimoto's where, I can't legally say that we cured it, but he's completely in remission from all of his symptoms and has been for a while now. Basically just from getting them leaner and fixing his hormones and bringing his overall stress down, even though he works on a farm 14 hours a day, like 7 days a week. And things like that is so rewarding too. Because like there's people that'll come to me where they're like, I've been dealing with this intense, painful issue for over a decade. And they don't really think that there's a fix. And they'll like see my post on like KTV or something. And they're like, what about this? And I'm like, yeah. Like, let's take some lifestyle factors. Let's try some KPV. Let's not have you on corticosteroids like your doctor would suggest that actually degrade your collagen tissue. Maybe try some low dose naltrexone, like, stuff that I probably can't talk about on a podcast. But I'm like, yeah, no, like there might be things that you can actually try out that you haven't tried. Let's fix your gut health, overall inflammation. Like we really, really try to push the message that inflammation, insulin resistance, gut health, and stress management are all so incredibly intrinsically linked. And that if you can fix one thing, it's going to help fix another thing. And if you can just get all four of those things together, like you can look and feel amazing. And on the other end, if you want to push yourself, you can probably also do that better if you're crazy like us, right?
I think the main issue I see with people is they're so used to feeling like trash that they think it's normal.
That's their baseline
And
now.
like that's just like that's just what they feel like. They think that's normal, and then they don't know what they could feel like, and it's wild because some people never realize that. But there are some that it's like after a few years they're like, this, I feel like trash. I need to get this checked out. And then you figure out like, oh shit, okay, I didn't know everything was wrong with me.
And then I've had clients too, you get them dialed in and they're feeling great. After a period of time, you get them in good shape, and then say they go on vacation or whatever, and they get a little overboard with things, and they're like, I feel terrible. Like, I don't know how I used to do that.
Yeah. You start realizing what you intake in your body and how it doesn't respond well, and like what you're doing to yourself. Like, I mean, that's like me. I'm not a big alcohol drinker, but anytime I drink alcohol, I don't feel great. And so it's just like, it's not something I particularly enjoy. So it's one of those things, but people will stop drinking for a while and they go back to it and they have a few drinks and they're like, God, this just makes me feel horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to say, if we smell alcohol from a mile away, we're hungover. Like it's pathetic. We're a bunch of grandparents, but we just value feeling good so much. We're like, oh, we'd rather just get trippy on the beach one day if we really need to feel not sober.
There you go.
Well, guys, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Where can we find you guys on Instagram as far as your coaching page? And I know you guys run a clinic too as well, right?
So, well, first of all, thank you for having us on. It's an honor to be on. I'm glad we finally got the chance to do it. And thanks for plugging us. So the main two ones are going to be our Instagram. So that's at tcy.coaching. Our YouTube is also the same name, so tcy.coaching. And then her Instagram is
Kara Morris _PA.
Yep. And then is there anything else?
That would probably be the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys both
YouTube
put out a lot of good information, so I recommend everybody goes and follows them, and they make a lot of good posts and reels to kind of talk about hormone optimization, how to live a better life. So it's something I really like to see.
Appreciate you guys, and if any of our fans are listening, keep listening to these guys as well.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you guys. Appreciate you.
This has been Betson and Coffee Unfiltered. Thank you guys for listening.
Make sure to go follow us on social media.